Alright, settle in because what I'm about to tell you, it's not your typical alien encounter story. You know, the kind where we're all shaking hands with big-eyed gray humanoids, or running from tentacled monsters. This is different. This is about a species called the HFY. And trust me, you've never seen anything like them. Imagine a galaxy where humans, after a long and hard climb, finally joined the galactic stage. We've got our ships, our outposts, we're making deals trying to fit in. But there's this one species, the HFY, they're a mystery wrapped in a puzzle, dipped in a whole lot of stay away signs. Physically they're striking. Tall, almost ethereal, with shimmering, iridescent skin that changes color with their moods. But it's not their looks that keep everyone at arm's length. Well, it's their females. See, HFY society is matriarchal, and the females, they hold all the power. Not just political power, but something deeper, something biological. They possess a unique pheromonal field, a kind of aura, that affects other species, especially males. It's potent, overwhelming. For most, it's a crippling wave of, well, let's just say intense emotional and physical responses. Think of it like walking into a room filled with every single one of your deepest desires and fears, all magnified 1,000 times. It's a sensory overload that leaves most species paralyzed or worse. The galactic community, after a few unfortunate incidents, quickly learned to keep their distance. Trade agreements were handled through intermediaries, diplomatic meetings were conducted with heavy shielding, and any research into HFY physiology was done remotely with drones. No one dared to get close, especially to the females. It was an unspoken rule, a galactic taboo. Except for one human. His name was Alex. Just Alex. No fancy titles, no military background, just a regular guy with a knack for understanding things, a kind of intuitive empathy. He was a xenolinguist, a specialist in alien communication, and he was fascinated by the HFY. Not by their technology, not by their politics, but by their culture, their art, their very essence. He saw past the fear, past the warnings, and he saw something else. Something intriguing, something beautiful. He started small. He studied their language, their art, their music, everything he could get his hands on. He pored over every piece of data, every recorded interaction, every whispered rumor. He began to understand the nuances of their communication, the subtle shifts in their iridescent skin, the almost imperceptible changes in their vocal patterns. He was building a bridge that no one else dared to even imagine. Then came the opportunity. A HFY delegation was visiting a neutral space station, a rare event. Alex, through some bureaucratic maneuvering and a healthy dose of sheer luck, managed to get himself assigned as a cultural liaison. It wasn't a high-profile position, mostly just making sure the delegates had everything they needed, but it was a foot in the door. He saw them for the first time in person. The males, tall and stoic, moved with a quiet dignity. But it was the females that held his gaze. Their presence was palpable. Even through the shielded meeting room, he could feel a faint hum, a subtle vibration in the air. He tried to focus on his duties, on the translation, on the protocols, but his mind kept drifting back to them. He noticed something else, something that no one else seemed to see. The fear, the almost palpable fear, in the eyes of the HFY males. They weren't just deferential to the females, they were afraid. It was a subtle thing, a flicker in their gaze, a slight tightening of their posture, but it was there. He wondered what they had seen, what they had experienced to instill such fear. He began to observe the HFY females more closely. He noticed the subtle shifts in their iridescent skin, the way it shimmered and pulsed with their emotions. He saw the way their eyes, large and luminous, seemed to hold a depth of knowledge and power. He saw the way they moved, with a grace and confidence that bordered on arrogance. But he also saw something else, something that contradicted the fear that everyone else felt. He saw a hint of loneliness. One evening, Alex was working late in his office, reviewing some HFY cultural data. He was alone, or so he thought. Suddenly, the door slid open and a HFY female stood before him. She was tall, even taller than the males, with skin that shimmered like 1,000 stars. Her eyes, large and luminous, were fixed on him. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he should be terrified, that he should be running, but he couldn't move. He felt a wave of something wash over him, a complex mix of emotions that he couldn't quite decipher. It was intense, overwhelming, but it wasn't the crippling fear that everyone had described. It was something else. She spoke, her voice a melodic hum, a series of clicks and whistles that resonated deep within his bones. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the intent. She was asking him something. He tried to respond, but his voice was caught in his throat. He could only stare at her, his mind racing, trying to process what was happening. She took a step closer, her iridescent skin shimmering in the dim light of his office. He could feel the phenomenal field now, a tangible presence that filled the room. It was like a symphony of emotions, a cacophony of desires and fears, all swirling around him. But amidst the chaos he felt a flicker of curiosity. She reached out a hand, her fingers long and slender, and touched his cheek. The contact was electric, a jolt that ran through his entire body. He gasped, his breath catching in his throat. He felt a surge of emotions, a tidal wave of sensations that threatened to overwhelm him. But he didn't pull away. He didn't run. He stood there, frozen, his eyes locked on hers. She spoke again, her voice softer this time, almost a whisper. He still didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. It was a question, a plea. She was asking him something important. He looked into her eyes, searching for an answer. He saw a depth of loneliness, a yearning that mirrored his own. He saw a spark of hope, a flicker of possibility. He saw a connection. He raised his own hand, trembling slightly, and touched her cheek. The contact was just as electric, just as intense. She gasped, her iridescent skin shimmering with 1,000 different colors. He saw a flicker of surprise in her eyes, a moment of stunned disbelief. Then she pulled away, her hand dropping to her side. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else. Something he couldn't quite place. She turned and fled, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. He stood there, alone in his office, his heart pounding in his chest. He felt a strange mix of emotions, a whirlwind of confusion and excitement. He had touched a KRYL female, he had felt her phenomenal field, and he had survived. More than survived, he had connected. But what did it mean? What had he done? And why did she react that way? He knew one thing for sure. He had crossed a line that no one else had dared to cross. He had broken the taboo. And now he had to face the consequences. Why story? The silence in the office was deafening. Alex's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of what had just happened. He replayed the moment of contact, the electric jolt, the cascade of emotions, the look in her eyes. It was a puzzle with missing pieces, a mystery that deepened with every passing second. He knew he couldn't just ignore it. He had to understand. He had to know why. The next day, the atmosphere in the KRLL delegation was thick with tension. The males, usually stoic and composed, seemed even more withdrawn, their eyes darting nervously around the room. The females, especially the one he had encountered, maintained a distant, almost regal air. But Alex could see the subtle signs, the slight tremor in their hands, the fleeting glances, the almost imperceptible changes in their skin tone. Something had shifted, something had changed. He tried to approach the female, to catch her eye, to signal that he wanted to talk. But she remained aloof, surrounded by her entourage, shielded by an invisible barrier of power and authority. He tried to find other KRLL who would talk to him, but they were all evasive, their answers vague and unhelpful. It was as if a wall had been erected, a wall of silence and fear. He began to delve deeper into KRYLL history and culture, searching for clues, for explanations. He found references to the phenomenal field, to its potent effects, to the dangers of close contact. But he found nothing about a human reacting the way he did. No records of anyone resisting the field, of anyone connecting with a KRYLL female. It was as if he had stumbled upon uncharted territory, a secret that had been buried for centuries. He learned more about the KRYLL matriarchy, about the power wielded by the females, about the fear they inspired. The stories were chilling, tales of entire fleets paralyzed by the phenomenal field, of diplomats driven to madness, of researchers driven to self-harm. The KRYLL females were not just powerful, they were feared, revered, and ultimately isolated. But he also found hints of a different story, a story of loneliness and isolation. The KRYLL females, despite their power, were trapped, confined to a life of control and fear. They were rulers, yes, but they were also prisoners. Their phenomenal field, their greatest weapon, was also their greatest curse, keeping them separated from everyone else. He started to wonder if that was why she came to him. Maybe, just maybe, she was reaching out, seeking a connection, a way out of her isolation. Maybe she saw something in him, something that no one else had seen. Maybe she saw a chance. The delegation's visit was coming to an end. Alex knew he had to act, to find a way to communicate, to understand what had happened. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. He couldn't let her disappear back into the shadows. He decided to take a risk. He knew it was dangerous, that he was playing with fire, but he couldn't ignore the feeling, the pull, the connection. He had to try. He waited until the last night, when the KRLL delegates were preparing to depart. He slipped away from his assigned duties and made his way to their private quarters. He knew he was trespassing, violating protocol, but he didn't care. He had to see her. He found her in a private chamber, alone, gazing out at the stars. She was even more beautiful than he remembered, her iridescent skin shimmering in the soft light. He approached her slowly, cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. She turned to face him, her eyes wide with surprise. She didn't speak, but her expression was a mix of fear, curiosity, and something else, something that looked like hope. He raised his hands, palms open, a gesture of peace. He spoke slowly, carefully, using the few KRYL words he knew. I want to understand. She tilted her head, her eyes searching his. She seemed to be trying to decipher his intentions, to read his mind. He waited, his breath held, hoping she would respond. She took a step closer, her pheromonal field washing over him. It was intense, overwhelming, but he focused, he concentrated, he tried to push past the chaos of emotions. He focused on her eyes, on her expression, on the flicker of hope that he saw there. She spoke, her voice a soft hum, a series of clicks and whistles that resonated deep within his bones. He still didn't understand the words, but he understood the intent. She was telling him something important. She reached out a hand and he took it. Her touch was electric, a jolt that ran through his entire body. He felt a surge of emotions, a torrent of sensations, but he held on, he didn't let go. She began to communicate, not with words, but with images, with emotions, with sensations. She showed him her world, her life, her loneliness. She showed him the power of the pheromonal field, its beauty and its curse. She showed him the fear, the isolation, the longing for connection. He saw the history of her people, the rise of the matriarchy, the subjugation of the males. He saw the wars, the treaties, the isolation. He saw the weight of power, the burden of responsibility. He saw her not as a ruler, not as a weapon, but as a person, a being trapped by her own power. He saw her loneliness, her yearning for connection, her desire to break free. He understood. He understood why she had come to him, why she had reached out. He was different. He was immune, or at least resistant, to the pheromonal field. He was a chance, a possibility, a way out. But he also understood the danger. He understood the risks. He understood the consequences. He had crossed a line that no one else had dared to cross. He had broken the taboo. And now he had to face the consequences. Suddenly the door slid open and KRL guards rushed into the chamber. They saw him, they saw their leader's hand in his, and they reacted instantly. They drew their weapons, their faces contorted with rage. He pulled his hand away, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he was in trouble, deep trouble. He had violated their most sacred taboo, he had touched their leader, he had threatened their power structure. The KRL female raised her hand, silencing the guards. She looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. She spoke, her voice firm and clear. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was telling him to leave, to go back, to forget what he had seen. She was protecting him, sacrificing herself. He looked at her, his eyes filled with regret. He wanted to stay, to fight, to help her. But he knew he couldn't. He was an outsider, a pawn in a game he didn't understand. He turned and fled, escaping through a side door, disappearing into the labyrinthine corridors of the space station. He knew he had to leave, to get off the station, to disappear. He made his way to the docking bay, his heart pounding in his chest. He found a small transport ship, a freighter bound for a remote outpost. He boarded the ship, paid the captain, and settled into a cramped cabin. As the ship lifted off, he looked out at the space station, at the lights of the KRLL delegation, at the mystery he had left behind. He knew he couldn't stay away forever. He knew he had to come back. He knew he had to understand. He had touched the untouchable. He had seen the unseen. And now he had to face the consequences. The galaxy was not going to let this event pass without notice. The human who touched a KRYL female, the one who saw behind the veil of power, was now a marked man. The freighter, a rusty hulk of a ship, rattled through the void, carrying Alex further and further away from the KRL delegation, from the space station, from the questions that burned in his mind. He was a fugitive, a marked man, his face likely plastered across every galactic news feed. He'd broken the ultimate taboo and the consequences were closing in. He spent his days in the cramped cabin, reviewing every scrap of information he had on the KRL. He reread the cultural data, the linguistic analyses, the historical records, searching for a pattern, a clue, anything that could explain what he had experienced. He was trying to understand the nature of the phenomenal field, its effects, its origins. He was trying to understand the KRYLL females, their power, their isolation, their loneliness. He knew he couldn't hide forever. The KRYLL, with their vast network of informants and their advanced technology, would find him eventually. And when they did, he knew it wouldn't be a friendly chat. He was a threat, a loose end, a potential catalyst for change. He began to formulate a plan. He needed to understand the KRYLL, to expose the truth about their society, to find a way to bridge the gap between their isolation and the rest of the galaxy. He needed to find allies, to gather information, to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. The freighter landed at a remote outpost, a dusty, forgotten colony on the edge of known space. Alex slipped off the ship, blending into the crowd of miners, traders, and outcasts. He needed to disappear, to become invisible. He found a small, rundown apartment, a place to lay low and gather his thoughts. He spent his days scouring the local data nets, searching for information on the KRYLL, on their activities, on their movements. He found whispers, rumors, fragmented reports of KRYLL ships patrolling the outer rim, of KRYLL agents infiltrating human colonies. He also found something else, something unexpected. A network of individuals who were also interested in the KRYLL, who were also questioning the official narrative. They were a disparate group, researchers, journalists, former diplomats, all united by a shared curiosity and a growing sense of unease. He reached out to them cautiously, anonymously. He shared his experiences, his insights, his theories. He found that he wasn't alone. Others had seen the fear in the KRYLL male's eyes, had sensed the loneliness in the KRYLL female's presence. Others had questioned the official narrative, had suspected that there was more to the KRYLL than met the eye. Together they began to piece together a picture of a society built on fear and control, a society trapped by its own power. They discovered evidence of internal dissent within the KRYLL ranks, of a growing movement that sought to challenge the matriarchy, to break free from the isolation. They also discovered evidence of a hidden agenda, a secret project that the KRYLL were developing, something that could tip the balance of power in the galaxy. They didn't know what it was, but they knew it was dangerous, that it was something that could not be allowed to fall into the wrong hands. Alex knew he had to act. He couldn't wait for the KRYLL to find him. He had to take the initiative to expose their secrets, to rally support. He had to return to the KRYLL to confront them, to find the female he had touched. He knew it was a suicide mission, a desperate gamble, but he couldn't ignore the feeling, the pull, the connection. He had to try. He gathered his allies, his network of researchers and journalists. They planned a daring infiltration, a covert operation to penetrate the KRYLL's defenses, to expose their secrets, to find the female. They secured a small, stealthy ship, a vessel capable of slipping past KRYLL patrols. Facility, a hidden base where the secret project was being developed. They infiltrated the facility, slipping through security checkpoints, bypassing laser grids, and disabling surveillance systems. They found the project, a massive, complex device that pulsed with energy, a device that seemed to amplify and control the phenomenal field. They realized its potential, its ability to turn the phenomenal field into a weapon that could subjugate entire planets. They also found her, the female he had touched. She was imprisoned, held captive in a shielded chamber, her phenomenal field contained, her power suppressed. She was weak, frail, but her eyes still held a spark of defiance. Alex knew he had to act. He had to free her, to disable the device, to expose the KRYLL's secrets. He had to risk everything. He and his team launched their attack, disabling security systems, sabotaging the device, and freeing the female. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity born of desperation. The KRYLL guards reacted swiftly, unleashing their weapons, their phenomenal field amplifiers, their security drones. The facility erupted in chaos, lasers flashing, explosions rocking the corridors, alarms blaring. Alex fought his way through the chaos, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached the female's chamber, disabled the shield, and freed her. She was weak, disoriented, but her eyes lit up when she saw him. They joined forces, combining their skills, their knowledge, their determination. They fought side by side, their connection a beacon in the chaos. They reached the control room, the heart of the facility, where the device was being controlled. They faced the KRYLL commander, a powerful female, her eyes filled with rage, her phenomenal field amplified to its maximum potential. The commander unleashed her power, a wave of emotions, a torrent of sensations that threatened to overwhelm them. Alex felt his mind reeling, his senses overloaded, but he held on, he focused on the female beside him, on the connection they shared. She raised her hand, her own pheromonal field resonating with his, creating a counterwave, a shield against the commander's attack. The two pheromonal fields clashed, a battle of wills, a struggle for control. The room vibrated with energy, the air crackling with tension. The commander's eyes narrowed, her face contorted with rage. She unleashed a final, devastating surge of power. The device began to overload, its energy surging, its circuits sparking. The room filled with light, a blinding flash that threatened to consume them all. The climax was at hand. The blinding flash intensified, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burnt circuits. Alex braced himself, his hand gripping the female parallels, their connection a fragile anchor in the chaos. The commander's amplified pheromonal assault was a psychic storm, threatening to shatter their minds, to obliterate their very sense of self. He could feel the raw power of her anger, her fear, her desperation, a tidal wave of emotions that threatened to drown him. Just as the device reached its critical point, a surge of energy erupted, not from the commander, but from the female parallel beside him. Her iridescent skin pulsed with an otherworldly light, her eyes glowing with an intensity that rivaled the device's overload. She was channeling the device's energy, redirecting it, not to amplify the commander's attack, but to create a countersurge, a wave of pure, unadulterated connection. The room shimmered, the air crackling with an almost tangible energy. The two pheromonal fields collided, not in a clash of dominance but in a fusion, a merging of wills. The commander's attack faltered, her expression shifting from rage to confusion, then to a dawning horror. The device, pushed beyond its limits, began to resonate with the combined pheromonal fields, creating a feedback loop, a cascading wave of energy that spread through the facility, then beyond into the surrounding space. The KRYL guards, the researchers, the entire facility were bathed in the light, their minds exposed, their emotions laid bare. Alex felt a strange sense of clarity, a moment of profound understanding. He saw the KRYL as they truly were, not as rulers or weapons, but as individuals, each with their own fears, their own hopes, their own desires. He saw the loneliness of the commander, the desperation of the guards, the yearning of the researchers. He saw the truth of the KRYL society, a society built on fear and isolation, a society trapped by its own power. But he also saw something else, something unexpected, something that changed everything. He saw the true nature of the pheromonal field, not as a weapon but as a connection, a way to bridge the gap between minds, between species. He saw its potential, its ability to foster understanding, to create empathy, to unite the galaxy. Then the second plot twist hit. A signal, a powerful, coded transmission, ripped through the facility's comms array. It was a KRYL war fleet, a massive armada, responding to the energy surge, to the disruption, to the potential threat. They were on their way and they were not coming to negotiate. The female KRYL, her eyes wide with alarm, turned to Alex. She spoke, her voice urgent, her words filled with a desperate plea. He understood even without understanding the language. The fleet was coming to enforce order, to suppress any dissent, to eliminate any threat. They would see the facility, the device, the rebellion, and they would react with overwhelming force. They had exposed the KRYL's secrets, but now they had ignited a war. The stakes had been raised, the conflict escalated to a galactic scale. They were no longer fighting for survival, but for the future of the KRYL, for the future of the galaxy. The commander, her mind reeling from the feedback loop, from the exposure to the combined pheromonal fields, looked at them with a mixture of fear and understanding. She knew what the fleet would do. She knew the consequences of their actions. She knew they had to stop them. She made a decision, a desperate gamble, a choice that could redeem her or condemn her. She turned to the control panel, her fingers flying across the keys, overriding security protocols, accessing the facility's comms array. She sent a message, a counter-signal, a coded transmission to the fleet, a message that would change everything. She spoke, her voice echoing through the comms system, her words broadcast to the approaching fleet. She spoke of the truth, of the pheromonal field's potential, of the isolation, of the need for change. She spoke of the human, of the connection, of the hope for a future where KRYL and humans could coexist. The fleet's response was immediate, a wave of confusion, then of anger, then of fear. They were divided, their loyalty fractured, their understanding shattered. They were faced with a choice between obedience and rebellion, between fear and hope. The facility's defenses activated, targeting the approaching fleet, not as an attack, but as a deterrent, a warning. The female Carewell, her eyes filled with determination, amplified the message, broadcasting it to every ship in the fleet, to every Carewell on every planet. The galaxy held its breath, the fate of the Carewell, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. The fleet, faced with the truth, with the potential for change, with the choice between fear and hope, had to decide. Would they obey their orders, enforce the status quo and crush the rebellion? Or would they embrace the truth, break free from their isolation and forge a new future? Alex, watching the unfolding events, knew that the climax was at hand. The decision of the Carewell fleet would determine the fate of the galaxy. He had touched the untouchable, exposed the unseen, and ignited a revolution. Now he had to face the consequences, to witness the outcome, to see if his actions had brought hope or destruction. The Carewell fleet hung in the void, a silent armada caught in the crossfire of conflicting commands and exposed truths. The air crackled with tension, the silence broken only by the faint hum of their engines and the echoing broadcast of the commander's message. Alex watched, his heart pounding, as the fleet's ships began to shift, their formations breaking apart, their weapon systems cycling erratically. The first ship to break ranks was a small scout vessel, its lights flickering in a coded sequence, a signal of acceptance, of understanding. It turned away from the facility, its weapons deactivated, and began to transmit its own message, a relay of the commander's broadcast, amplified and directed towards the heart of the fleet. Then another ship followed, a massive destroyer, its guns silent, its shields lowered. It too turned away, its message echoing through the void, a call for unity, for change. One by one, the ships of the Carewell fleet began to break ranks, their formations dissolving, their weapons deactivated. The message spread like wildfire, a wave of understanding, a tide of change. The commander, her face etched with exhaustion but her eyes filled with hope, turned to Alex and the female Carewell. "They have chosen," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "They have chosen connection." The facility's defenses deactivated, their energy redirected to amplify the broadcast, to ensure that every Carewell, every human, every sentient being within range heard the message. The phenomenal field, once a weapon of control, was now a tool of unity, a bridge between minds, a catalyst for change. The Carewell fleet, once a symbol of fear and isolation, was now a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of connection. The galaxy watched, holding its breath, as the Carewell began to dismantle their isolation, to embrace a new future, a future where they could coexist with other species, where they could share their knowledge, their culture, their very essence. The female Carewell, her eyes filled with tears, turned to Alex. "You showed us," she said, her voice trembling. "You showed us that we are not alone. You showed us that connection is possible." Alex smiled, his heart filled with a sense of profound satisfaction. He had done it. He had broken the taboo, he had exposed the truth, he had ignited a revolution. He had shown the Carewell and the galaxy that connection was stronger than fear, that understanding was more powerful than control. But the climax was not over. The final, unexpected twist was about to unfold. A lone ship, a sleek, black vessel, emerged from the shadows of the fleet, its weapon systems fully activated, its shields at maximum power. It was a rogue ship, a vessel commanded by a Carewell extremist, a believer in the old ways, a defender of the matriarchy, a believer that any change was weakness. The rogue ship fired, its weapons targeting the facility, its energy focused on the device, on the source of the broadcast, on the catalyst for change. The commander, her eyes wide with horror, tried to override the ship's systems, to disable its weapons, but it was too late. The rogue ship's attack struck the device, its energy overloading the already unstable systems. The facility shook, the lights flickered, the air crackled with raw power. A surge of energy erupted, a wave of pure, unadulterated phenomenal force, amplified beyond anything ever seen before. The wave spread through the facility, through the fleet, through the surrounding space, reaching every Carewell, every human, every sentient being within range. It was not a weapon, not a tool of control, but a pure, unfiltered connection, a moment of shared consciousness, a universal understanding. Alex felt his mind expand, his senses heightened, his consciousness merging with every other being in the galaxy. He saw the Carewell not as rulers or weapons, but as individuals, each with their own fears, their own hopes, their own desires. He saw the humans not as conquerors or victims, but as explorers, as creators, as beings capable of great compassion and great destruction. He saw the galaxy not as a collection of planets and stars, but as a living, breathing entity, a network of interconnected minds, a tapestry of shared experiences. Then just as quickly as it began, the wave subsided. The energy dissipated, the connection faded, leaving behind a profound sense of peace, a shared understanding, a universal empathy. The rogue ship, its attack having triggered the surge, was consumed by the backlash, its systems overloaded, its hull breached, its crew lost. It was the last gasp of the old ways, the final act of resistance against the tide of change. The facility, damaged but intact, stood as a testament to the power of connection, a symbol of hope for a new future. The KRWL fleet, united in their newfound understanding, began to move, not as an armada of conquest, but as a fleet of exploration, a symbol of peace, a beacon of unity. Alex, standing beside the female KRWL and the commander, looked out at the stars, his heart filled with a sense of profound satisfaction. He had played his part, he had made his contribution, he had helped to shape the future of the galaxy. He had touched the untouchable, exposed the unseen, and ignited a revolution. He had shown the galaxy that connection was possible, that understanding was powerful, that hope was stronger than fear. And now he knew the galaxy would never be the same. The dust settled, both literally and metaphorically. The immediate aftermath of the phenomenal surge was a period of stunned silence, a galaxy collectively catching its breath. The KRWL fleet, having witnessed and participated in the shared consciousness, began to reorganize, not as a military force, but as a collective of explorers and diplomats. The rogue ship, a charred husk drifting in the void, served as a stark reminder of the old ways, a symbol of the resistance that had been overcome. Within the damaged research facility, a sense of quiet triumph prevailed. The commander, her face pale but her eyes resolute, began to issue new orders, directives aimed at dismantling the old power structures and establishing a new era of cooperation. The female Carol, her hand resting gently on Alex's arm, looked out at the stars, her expression a mixture of awe and hope. The immediate task was to repair the facility and to disseminate the knowledge gained from the device. The phenomenal field, now understood as a tool for connection, was to be studied and utilized for peaceful purposes, for bridging cultural divides and fostering interspecies understanding. The KRWL, once isolated and feared, were now poised to become galactic mediators, their unique ability a catalyst for unity. Alex, though exhausted, felt a profound sense of peace. He had come to the KRWL seeking understanding, and he had found far more than he bargained for. He had found a connection, a purpose, a role in shaping the future of the galaxy. He had become a bridge, a translator, a symbol of the potential for human KRWL cooperation. The news of the phenomenal surge and the KRWL's transformation spread like wildfire through the galactic networks. Human colonies, alien outposts, even the most remote settlements, received the broadcast, the shared experience, the moment of universal understanding. Reactions were varied, ranging from cautious optimism to outright disbelief. But one thing was clear, the galaxy had changed. Humanity, initially wary of the KRWL's power, began to see them in a new light. The fear that had once dominated their interactions was replaced by a sense of curiosity, a desire to learn more about this enigmatic species. Diplomatic missions were launched, trade agreements were renegotiated, and cultural exchange programs were established. The KRWL in turn began to open their doors to the galaxy. They shared their knowledge, their technology, their art, their culture. They sought to understand other species, to learn from their experiences, to build bridges of understanding. They became ambassadors of peace, mediators in conflicts, and pioneers in interspecies collaboration. The research facility, once a symbol of isolation and control, was transformed into a center for interspecies research and cultural exchange. Scientists, diplomats, artists, and philosophers from across the galaxy flocked to the facility, eager to learn from the KRWL and to contribute to the new era of cooperation. Alex, now a respected figure in galactic affairs, became a key player in this transformation. He worked tirelessly to facilitate communication between humans and KRWL, to translate cultural nuances, to bridge the gaps of understanding. He became a symbol of the potential for interspecies harmony, a testament to the power of connection. The female KRWL, now a leading voice in the KRWL government, became a champion of reform, advocating for equality and cooperation. She worked to dismantle the old matriarchal structures, to empower the KRWL males, and to create a more just and equitable society. The commander, her past actions forgiven and her expertise recognized, became a key figure in the KRLL military, leading the transition from a force of conquest to a force of peace. She oversaw the dismantling of the old weapons systems and the development of new technologies for defense and exploration. The galaxy, once divided by fear and misunderstanding, began to unite. The phenomenal field, once a weapon of control, became a tool for empathy, a catalyst for understanding. The KRLL, once isolated and feared, became a beacon of hope, a symbol of the potential for interspecies harmony. Years passed, decades even, and the galaxy continued to evolve. Human-KRLL relations flourished, leading to a new era of scientific discovery, artistic expression, and cultural exchange. The phenomenal field, now understood and controlled, was used to facilitate communication, to resolve conflicts, and to foster empathy. The memory of the phenomenal surge, the moment of shared consciousness, remained a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of all beings. It became a cultural touchstone, a symbol of the potential for unity, a testament to the power of connection. Alex, now an elder statesman, looked back on his journey with a sense of profound satisfaction. He had come to the KRLL seeking understanding, and he had found far more than he bargained for. He had found a connection, a purpose, a role in shaping the future of the galaxy. He had become a bridge, a translator, a symbol of the potential for human KRLL cooperation. He had touched the untouchable, exposed the unseen, and ignited a revolution. He had shown the galaxy that connection was possible, that understanding was powerful, that hope was stronger than fear. And now, as he looked out at the stars, he knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The end.